take on. This episode of Heavy Cardboard is brought to you by BoardGameTables.com. While none of us needs a gaming table, it sure would be great to have one as the centerpiece of your game days. Go check them out at BoardGameTables.com and take your gaming to the next level. Now, on to the show. Heavy Cardboard, Episode 57, Princes of the Renaissance. Coming to you from the basement still isn't finished house. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, where we talk medium and heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx, and other related topics in the board gaming hobby. We're your hosts. I'm Edward.
And I'm Amanda.
So tonight's our first effort in putting out weekly content.
Yeah.
As we mentioned last episode, we're going to do the quote-unquote full show once a month or so with feature reviews, interviews, first looks, and whatever, interspersed weekly so that y'all are getting more content more often, but honestly, it cuts down the behind-the-scenes stuff on our end. So it's a win-win, we hope. Just let us know what you think.
And please, guys, let us know if you have any suggestions as well for possible content. That'd be awesome too.
We want to thank Carmen and Elaine, the great people behind Game Surplus, for their continued sponsorship of the show. Great people and reputation and an amazing inventory of games, including many imports and hard-to-find games. Their tagline is home of great games at great prices, so check them out over at GameSurplus.com and tell them Heavy Cardboard sent you.
All right, guys, enjoy this interview that Edward conducted with Martin Wallace at Spiel 2016.
Good morning from Essen Spiel 2016. I am very fortunate to be sitting down with the esteemed Martin Wallace of Tree Frog Games, among a million other game designs that he's done. So, Martin, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me today.
No, thank you for coming along, Edward. It's, yeah.
So, you have two games here at Spiel. One in prototype form, one in new game, The Arrival, over at Games Up.
Yep.
So, you want to talk a little bit about The Arrival?
What about the games I've got with Space Cowboys?
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Three new games. Now, I own this show. So three new games out. So there's Hit Zero Road, Via Nebula, although those two were released at Gen Con. And then there's Games Up. Then I'm also showing prototypes of the last Tree Frog game, A Handful of Stars. And there's also another prototype that I've been showing on the Plastic Soldier Company booth, which is Lincoln, which is a two-player American Civil War game.
I was unaware of this.
Well, there you go. You need to do your research.
Yeah, fair.
So, going back to The Arrival, if you want to know a bit about that, it's kind of an updated Mordred. But the dice system is being replaced by cards, so you have a little bit more control over the resources you get, But at heart, it's the same kind of thing where players are collectively trying to defeat the bad guys, but at the same time, we're also striving to be an individual winner. So it's a non-cooperative, cooperative game. I think they've done pretty well with that as a first-time company.
I actually interviewed Ralph, and I was amazed that a brand new company got a Martin Wallace design for their first game. So that piqued my interest as to how that came about.
Well, it's not hard. He sent me an email saying, I'd like a game. And I said, have you got any money? And he said, yes. And it's deal.
Fair enough.
I might design a lot of games, but, money's still tight.
Sure.
It's hard to make a living. So, if somebody comes along, although does that mean I'm just going to get inundated with emails tomorrow? They're like, give us a game. They're like, oh, God.
First world problems, though, right? So we're sitting here looking at A Handful of Stars, which is the final game of Tree Frog Games.
Yep. Yeah, the
So-
very last.
So, talk about that transition, how that's come about, why it's come about, and is that a good thing or a bad thing in the end?
I think the main reason it's come about is because the games we've put out in the last few years just simply haven't made enough money to support the company. And also with the passing of Terry Pratchett, we lost the Discord license, which is one of pretty much the only game we had that sold reliably on an ongoing basis. That was our evergreen. So companies struggle if they don't have an evergreen.
Sure.
You know, Days of Wonder, they've got their Ticket to Ride, and Cosmos have their Settlers, and Hans and Gluck have their Carcassonne. So you've always got that background sales. If you don't have that, then if you don't have regular hits, then you're in trouble. And the games we were putting out, you know, they did okay, but they weren't doing amazingly well. You know, the move to New Zealand didn't help. You know, it made it very difficult to operate the old Tree-Frog model.
Being out in
Yeah.
further away.
And also there's just so much more competition. You know, when we first started back in the 90s, nobody was doing the kind of games that we were doing. So you put a game out there, it didn't matter what it looked like. The people who were into that kind of game just bought it. And you didn't have to do any marketing, any advertising. You know, you just let people know and they'd come and buy. Whereas now, I'm sure somebody, I don't know how true it is, somebody said there's something like 3,600 new games released at this show.
That seems like a big number, but still over 1,000
Yeah,
for sure,
it's
right?
a lot. And there's the way more, you know, heavier games. So maybe you look at the stuff that Stronghold's putting out, and the quality of the production is amazing. I mean, you look at the stuff that's put out, and you compare it to the kind of stuff that Avalon Hill put out in the 80s.
Sure.
And that Avalon Hill then was a high-quality publisher for wargamers. You know, once in a while, your cards would be coloured in. Sometimes you wouldn't have to actually cut them out yourself. But nowadays, and quite simply, we can't compete with that anymore. We can do it, yeah, we can produce designs, but we can't compete on the level of doing that level of artwork on a reliable basis, that level of marketing. And so, because we just don't, there's me and my wife.
Sure.
That's it, there's me and Julie, and we just don't have the time to do it. So it's like, well, okay, focus on what you're good at. And this is what a number of people have told me. You know, I enjoy designing games. I don't particularly enjoy doing the marketing. I don't particularly enjoy the production process, so we'll just do what you're good at, let other people do what they're good at. So, I mean, a good example of that is with the reissue brass. You know, Roxy Games are doing a brilliant job on the artwork. Their attention to detail there, they're setting up things in a much more reliable, professional way than I would have been able to do. So that's great. So the public get one of my designs, but it's published in a better quality format than they would have got from Tree-Frog. You know, similarly, I'm doing stuff with Osprey Games. I'm doing stuff with Plastic Soldier Company. Obviously, you know, there's the things some other companies like Games Up, from Space Cowboys. So there
Mercury Games with the reprints of Princess of the Renaissance.
So there's plenty. I kind of figured now, because there's so many more companies out there, people want content, and I'm a content provider. So it's a lot easier for me to place games with companies. You know, back in the 90s, there was no way I would have been able to license those heavier games to companies because there's nobody around that wanted to publish them. Now there'll be like 20 companies that would bite my hand off.
Which is great. As somebody, a fan of heavy games, and as well as the show featuring heavier games, it's amazing. It's Renaissance time. This is a good time to be us
for the gamer themselves. You've never had it better.
Seriously.
For the companies, it's a nightmare. I mean, seriously, you know, the companies I talk to, it's very, very competitive. When you have single guys putting out stuff on Kickstarter, which is getting lots of money in that, you know, there's a lot of money going into Kickstarter games that's being drawn away from the more established companies.
From the traditional publishing method, right?
Yeah. which I suppose to a certain degree goes some way to explaining, for instance, Asmodee's policy of acquiring major brands, because that's a way for them to corner the market in games that sell reliably.
Right.
You know, because
it's been a big discussion among media folk that whether or not it's a good thing for the industry as a whole, what Asmodee is doing, and it's exciting times either way.
I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a natural reaction to the way the market's going. You know, the thing is, the bottom line is, the internet has changed the world. You know, it's changed.
Totally agree.
You know, it's changed the world of publishing. It's changed the world of media. You know, television, films, and it changed the world of music. I mean, God, you know, musicians, bands really struggle to make money now. It's a lot harder, even though you have greater access to people. It's a lot more competitive, so it's a lot harder to make a living from it. And it's a similar thing in the board games industry. The internet has fundamentally changed the nature of the industry. So you have to adapt.
Right. So in the end, though, it's reassuring to hear that Martin Wallace isn't going anywhere, just the production company's going away.
I mean, I suppose it's a case. I will be mixing up what I do. So it's not like every game I'm going to be doing is going to be a typical Martin Wallace game, because sometimes you have to do those simpler games that are going to earn the money. I mean, that's the reality. You know,
money drives. I totally understand. So it's almost more widely accepted game that's going to sell more copies. It gives you the benefit to then go and design the game that quote unquote Martin Wallace game.
Yes, yeah, because the bottom line is the big complicated games, they don't make any money. They just don't. They're very limited sales, very limited sales. So I suppose it's a little bit like, you find this with some directors or some, they'll do the big mega budget films so they can make enough money to do the vanity projects.
Yeah, they're pet projects, exactly.
So it's the same thing. And it sometimes kind of annoys me when people comment on my games. It's like, oh, this is his normal stuff. Oh, this is very simple.
You do want to pay the bills.
It's like, this is a full-time job for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got a mortgage. I've got overheads. It's like, Jesus, give us a break.
All right, so a handful of stars I'm looking at. I've heard that the timing track and the every time you shuffle, that mechanic is the timer of the game, and that's pretty original. Not fix. Let me correct that.
No, I'd accept the word fix. It is a fix.
Okay.
It was an issue. I know what you're getting at. It was an issue with Mythotopia ending the game, and I wish I'd come up with that idea then, because I really struggled with how to end Mythotopia. And it is a problem with any game where the end game condition is set by a target victory point thing, because it's as you get close to that, players' behavior change, okay? And I didn't want a set turn track as such, because you don't know how many turns are going to be in the game. So the shuffle track, at first I think, oh, that won't work. But once I brought it in, it's like, yeah, that works really nicely, because that means every time you play, the game is pretty much going to be the same amount of time, because, the background shuffle rate doesn't really change that much.
Right.
So, it just solves a lot of the problems that I had with Mythotopia. The other thing that I'm pleased about, that I think adds a lot to the game, is the fact that the board is a random setup each time. So
that adds that variability in there.
You never play on the same map twice. And the other thing is that the forces are on the board. Now, in A Few Acres of Stowe and Mythotopia, your strength was kind of abstracted because it's in your hand. So effectively, there was no position on the board. Yes, you control areas, but your army is effectively wherever you want it to be.
Exactly, right.
Whereas in this game, your forces have a defined position, and you have to think much more in terms of, okay, which areas I'm going to defend by putting star bases in, where's my mobile forces going to be, making sure that your systems are connected so that they can support each other. Because the way combat works is it's a kind of tug-of-war thing where when combat occurs, you can move your fleets that are within range into combat as reinforcements. So having a connected empire is good. Having fleets that are mutually supporting is good. Almost like in a Napoleonic sense, where he would march his armies in groups, which would then
Support
concentrate
one another.
at the point of battle when it came. So for me, of the 3 games, I think this is by far the best one. It's cleaner, it's more intuitive, and for me, it's an interesting intellectual challenge in that you know when you play, it's like, okay, what's your strategy going to be?
Because as it reveals itself as far as the random setup, what worked last game might not work this game.
Yeah. Plus, you've got alien races with different powers, so you got one bunch of guys who are like really peaceful. You got another bunch that are really aggressive. Some are good. Yeah, some are good at technology. Some are good at storing stuff. Others are good at exploring. So you've kind of got that little bit of asymmetry between the races. So you have to adopt different strategies depending on your particular race.
So do you have any ideas already cooked up for what's next even after A Handful of Stars? Or is it, no, I'm focused on this game and that's it, and then once this is ready, then we move on to the next project?
In terms of A Handful of Stars, and that's kind of deck building thing, this is the end of the line with this, because this is going to be a limited edition of 2,500, but I've already sold the IP to Fantasy Flight. Okay, so in theory, once this is over, the game belongs to them outright. In terms of other games I'm working on, I've got quite a few games already designed, which I would say are heavier games, that I am looking, at the moment, is looking for the right way to publish them so that I can maximize the amount of money I make from them. So I've got a couple of designs that's like, I've got one design in particular that I designed about 4 or 5 years ago, which really needs to be done on Kickstarter because the components are going to be quite expensive. At the moment, it's kind of figuring out how, which company to do that, how that's going to be structured. I've got another game which is loosely a follow-up to A Study in Emerald, not in terms of mechanisms, but in that continuing a story in another direction. And that, this is a game that is just crazy. It's a mixture, it's set in Australia, and it's a mixture of Call of Cthulhu and train building. And I don't think this has ever been done before.
I don't know why. They're natural partners right there, right?
Absolutely. But, so again, that's another one where it's like, that one again, pretty much got to be Kickstarter. It's not a game for the general public. It's not a game that's going to involve
very niche.
It's very niche. So yeah, it's just. But again, there's simpler stuff I'm working on for different companies. So there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I imagine people are just going to get, at some point, they're just going to, oh God, not another Wallace game. It's like, really?
But for fans of ours, and that's why I specifically mentioned The Arrival and A Handful of Stars, that matches our scope, I guess is a good way to put it. How will folks be able to follow, especially when it comes to the heavier releases, since Tree Frog's going away, and that's normally newsletter type thing, how will folks be able to keep tabs on what the next exciting Martin Wallace is?
Yeah, it's a good question. If I was more organized, I'd have a mailing list, but I keep forgetting to do things like that because I'm usually doing something else. This is why I say I don't really do marketing. Yeah, in theory, I should just be sticking up, I don't know, my Facebook, on the Tree Frog Facebook page or putting it on the website. The reality is usually, Board Game Geek, anybody who's interested in the kind of games I do, they go to the Geek.
Sure.
And, it should be obvious when stuff with my name is coming out.
Fair enough.
I suppose the thing, though, is not to expect every game to be in that similar weight range, that...
Which I think that helps hearing that from you, knowing that, look, I have to do this to pay the bills, so I can do these that our fans of our show and stuff will want more so than some of the lighter games.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is enlightening, and something that we'll know to keep an eye out for. So one last question before we go.
Yep.
You're a gamer.
Yep.
What are you looking forward to here? Or you've had time, I hope, to explore the fair a bit?
Actually, no, I've not really looked around a lot. I kind of knew before I came. There's a couple of games I was interested in. I mean, there's so many games, it's an overload. But I know when I was at Gen Con, I like the look of Terraforming Mars. So I managed to blag a copy from Stephen at the show here. I'd like the look of Cry Havoc, but Ignacio was very kind. He actually sent me a copy, which arrived just a couple of days before coming over here. You've got to remember, I've got to fly back to New Zealand, so I'm very limited in what I can take.
As going to the States, I can relate, yes.
And then I also picked up a copy of Innis from Matago. And then there's a copy of Snowdonia, the Guilds of London from Surprise Stair Guys.
Yep, from Tony.
Tony. And that's pretty much it, because a lot of my gaming time is spent playtesting, so I don't get a lot of time to actually play other games. But I figured, no, those sound, good medium to heavyweight games that are kind of interesting. I'm sure I've missed out on some real gems here, but I kind of think, no, this is what I've got, be happy with what I've got.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So time frame on a fistful of stars, or a handful of stars, sorry.
Yeah. We're going to start, we need to get the thing funded because I've got no money. So what we're going to do is be taking pre-orders probably from November. I've got a number of companies who've agreed that they're going to do this. So we're talking to Spiral Galaxy in the UK, Board Game Geek are going to help take pre-orders, Grey Fox. So what's going to happen is in November, we're going to put it up on the Tree Frog website and people can go there and then they'll be given options depending on where they live. Say, right, okay, if you're in America, these are your options. If you're in Europe, it's actually going to be one option. We'll have an option for Australia because we've got some friends who run Games Capital in Canberra will take pre-orders for us. So there'll be different places that people can buy it from. And then those people, once we've got the money in from pre-orders, then we can pay to get the game printed and then get it out there. I should warn people, it is going to be a high price point. It is a limited game. There's only going to be 2,500 units. The artwork has cost us a lot of money. And also, I need to make a bit of money from this just to
jumpstart.
Well, it's kind of cleaning up. With Tree Frog, we've still got a few unpaid debts left there, so it'd just be good to clear those so there's a fresh start for the design house. So, people are going to piss and moan like, wow, that's expensive. It's like, well,
It is what it is,
it is
right?
what it is. I'm going to have to say, Grey Fox and the people working have been very understanding, and they're willing to take a lower cut of the profits, to help us out. So they're not. It's not them gouging the public. It's me. I'm gouging you. Okay. So don't get the idea that they're profiteering from this because it's actually the reverse. They're actually taking a lower margin than they would do normally. So a big thank you to those guys for being supportive.
And that's awesome to be just straightforward. Look, it's on me, guys. Here you go. All right. So
Okay.
I know you have people waiting to get through a play, or not a play test, but a demo of A Handful of Stars. So I'll let you be. Thank you so much for taking the time, and definitely keep an ear out going forward for what's next. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
That was really cool. Big thanks to Martin Wallace for taking the time to sit with me for an interview and honestly for being so candid. I didn't expect that.
I don't think anybody did.
So
really?
From what I heard, that's the way he is. But again, I still didn't expect it. So yeah, that was very, very cool and definitely one of the highlights of Spiel for me.
That's awesome. Grail game, or in this case, former Grail game time. Princes of the Renaissance.
All right, Princes of the Renaissance, originally published in 2003, reprinted, now 2016 and November to boot. Designed by Martin Wallace, artist is Peter Dennis, published originally by Warfrog Games, which was Martin Wallace's war game side of his house, and the reprints by Mercury Games. It plays 3 to 6 players, and it says it plays in about 3 hours. More on that in a bit. As far as availability and cost, for the longest time, it's been an out-of-print Grail game for many. But as of our recording this, the reprint is shipping to Kickstarter backers right now as we speak. Mercury Games did mention, though, that for non-backers and for stores, you're looking at an early 2017 before you're going to see it on shelves at your friendly online game store, like, Game Surplus.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the game.
Princes of the Renaissance is a classic game where players represent one of the different powerful families during the Italian Renaissance, fighting for influence and prestige in the 5 major cities in Italy. The game is all about using money and influence, the 2 currencies in the game, in auctions and wars to gain prestige by the end of the game. The game is chock full of auctions, and believe it or not, stock investing, although not investing as you'd normally think of it. During the game, players will be able to auction off city tiles, or let's call them what they really are, shares of a city.
Right.
Event tiles, auction off position of the Pope, purchase treachery cards, or start wars. I mean, this is the Italian Renaissance after all, right? Over the course of 3 decades or rounds, players are going to take turns choosing one of the above mentioned actions. If they put a city tile up for auction, what they're really doing is offering up a share of stock of that city, of which there are 6 shares of each city. Each of those shares at the end of the game will be worth between 2 and 10 victory points, depending on the prestige level of that city, and that's where the wars come in. Wars are lucrative to take part in, as the winning and losing cities will see their prestige rise and fall respectively. Not only that, but the individual cities do not have armies of their own. Instead, the players auction off the right to lead the attacking and defending of the warring cities. The prize for winning the auction to become the condottieri, cash. The city's prestige level dictates the amount of money the condottieris will be paid, win or lose, for helping, quote unquote, win the war. So you would think that wars are started all the time, as they're the main mechanic in how cities raise their prestige and players earn cash. But clever as the design is, wars are limited in that there can only be a certain amount in a given decade, 4 or 5 depending on the player count. I didn't even mention that whoever won the auction to become Pope can choose to side with the attacking or defending city and add their armies to the respective condottieris' armies. Oh, and we can't forget the playing of treachery cards, which can remove units from battle or give small modifiers to help sway a war as well. Now, all of this isn't to say that winning wars doesn't pay. Not only does the prestige of the city go up for the winning side, but the condottieri of the winning city also gains victory points based upon a Fibonacci sequence scale. So the more wars you win, the more victory points you're going to gain for the end of the game. The timer of the game and of each of the 3 decades are the event tiles. Those get auctioned off when a player selects them, and they provide bonus endgame victory points, or in some instances, can directly impact a city's prestige level. There are 4 for each decade, and when the 4th one is auctioned off each decade, that ends said decade, so the players are in complete control of the length and timer of the game. After the 3rd decade, players tally up their victory points, get victory points for the most cash, influence in hand, respectively, and whoever has the most wins. So let's talk plays, player count, and scalability. I've played it 4 times so far, and all at 5 and 6 players. For what it's worth, though, BGG community says it's pretty solid, and our buddies over at Punching Cardboard, Jim and Eric, have played it 4-player and said they thought it played really well at 4 as well. 3 players is doable, but it's less than ideal, like most auction games.
Yeah, you don't want to play auction games with less than 4 people. That would be kind of weird.
Or in this case, I think that's true. Again, this is all conjecture because neither of us have played it with less than 5, but it is what it is.
Now, I've got 1 less play than you. I played it 3 times, 1 6-player and 2 5-player games.
As far as scalability, the only aspect of the game that scales with less than 5 players is that there can be a maximum of only 4 wars per decade as opposed to 5. Other than that, there's really no scaling to speak of.
There really isn't at all. It's the same game, just less people around the table.
All right, let's move on to the cardboard. So components, graphic design, artwork, etc. So components. Chunky wooden bits for the attacking, defending city markers, and a wooden cannon for the warriors marker. Let me stop and mention that this entire review is going to be about the Mercury reprint because let's face it, that's going to be the main one that's going to be out in the wild. Yes, we have the original, but most people are going to be wanting to know about the Mercury reprint, so that's what this is in regards to.
Right.
So there's cardboard for everything else other than basically those three pieces of wood, right?
Yeah, there's cardboard standees to indicate the different families.
And as far as all, whether or not you've passed in an auction or you're still taking place, I think those are good in theory, but all too often, people just forget to use them.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, I didn't pass. Let me turn this around.
Right.
So I think it's one of those things to where, it's a cool, idea in concept, but in actuality, I don't know that they're really necessary.
Right. And on that same note, the fact that both currencies have to be shown, like you have to show the number of chits you have, but it's hidden information. So you have to have the chits available to be seen by people, but only you know what every value of them are.
Because they range from 1 to 10.
And that is a pain in the butt because you have to constantly be shifting them around, looking at them, picking them up, looking at them to figure out how much you have. Because if you're like me and have a short-term memory problem, you can't remember what you just looked at.
Right. And so but to their defense, I don't know that they could have done anything differently to make, you couldn't use a player screen because if you did, then people wouldn't know how many chits, a ballpark idea on how much you have. So that wouldn't work. So I think it's a problem without a reasonable solution.
The only thing I've been able to come up with is like a Scrabble tile holder thingy, like that you just stack them in. But that, that's whatever. That's kind of dumb too. So I don't know.
I think it's much ado about nothing. Yes, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is.
It doesn't make me not want to play the game. It's just annoying.
So everything cardboard-wise is thick. All the tiles are thick and chunky cardboard. So I think the component quality on all of that is really good. However, the city value markers are cardboard. I would have liked to have seen them be little wooden discs.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
It just kind of lessens the production a little bit. Just that one little thing, as far as component quality goes. The cards are decent cardstock, and I haven't felt the need to sleeve them.
No.
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it as far as the components go. Mm-hmm. The box size, it's the same as Guns of Gettysburg and other games of theirs. It's very close to a standard box size, kind of like Agricola or whatnot. It's 12.5 inches by just over 9 inches by just over 2 inches thick. Although the orientation is sideways, so instead of it being, long ways on your shelf,
it's not
it would
portrait,
be,
it's landscape.
There you go. Thank you. All right. So as far as graphic design, I think it's pretty clear overall.
It's very clear.
I'm glad they clearly marked on the city status display or the stock track, if you will, the starting values of each city. A simple but helpful addition that the original did not have, which is a nice little thing. I do wish the cost of the treachery cards, though, was listed somewhere, and whether the event tiles were auctions or of money or influence, I wish those were a little bit more prominent on the tiles themselves.
Yeah, they're pretty small.
Other than that, I'd say I'm pretty pleased with the graphic design.
I have one other complaint. The purple and blue cities, the colors are quite close to each other. You can tell the difference with them side by side, but if you're just looking at a purple city or just looking at a blue city, it might be hard for some people to differentiate the two colors.
I'll agree with that. It's also going to be dictated by your lighting situation.
True.
The better the lighting, the more obvious the differences are.
Yes, for sure.
If it's in a little bit of a lower light environment, then that can be an issue, although it's not a big issue, I would say.
I also would think that the name of the city could be a little bit bigger on the board because whenever you purchase
one of the artist tiles,
you put it on top of the board and it very much almost completely covers up the city name. So that would be better if that was a little bit bigger font.
All right, moving on to the artwork. The artwork's been completely redone for the Mercury Games reprint. And the choices that they chose, I think, are really well done. Beautiful colors and simple yet clear iconography on the board.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so the rule book. The rule book in the second edition, really clear, and there really wasn't anything that required us to go searching for on BGG as far as rules questions. Anything that comes to mind for you?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, no.
However, I do wish there was a player aid for each player to remind everyone what their options were, as well as what a money auction and what an influence auction. What these tiles are influence auctions.
Right.
These are money auctions and stuff. And yes, as you play the game more, that becomes more obvious. But when you're first starting out, something like that would be very beneficial for newer players.
And also to remember that whenever a city tile is auctioned, that it's always double the start bid is double the value of the city currently.
Exactly.
That would be good as well.
I don't know what 6 extra pieces of paper would cost, or cardstock would cost to add to the value, as far as the game production wise. But that's a shortcut that a cost savings that I wish wasn't. I would have been willing to pay a little bit more to have that. Yes, there are ones that are on BGG that you can print out, but that's something that it's an oversight that shouldn't have been, in my opinion.
I agree.
All right, as far as now setup, tear down, teaching, and learning. Setup, really simple, really straightforward. Separate the money and influence tokens into different piles, being the most quote-unquote difficult part, which is to say that there really isn't anything time-consuming.
No.
Tear down, all you need is a handful of baggies. Separate the coin by denomination, the influence by denomination if you want to go that extra step to save you a little time later on, and then bag up the wooden bits, and really that's it.
Yep.
I mean, there's just not much there.
It really isn't.
As far as teaching and learning, the concept, like the actual rules, are not hard.
No.
But understanding, okay, hey, I understand the mechanics of it, but I don't understand the repercussions of everything. That's where it gets a little tricky. So you go over the actions that a player can take on their turn, spend a little extra time explaining how everything works, especially the wars. Clarify the timing of playing treachery cards, although most are clearly defined on the cards, and then explain end-game scoring, and that's pretty much it.
There's not a ton of rules overhead.
So as far as teaching and learning, teaching, not hard. Learning, concept-wise, not hard, but the actual intricacies of the game is where it gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
All right, so heavy, medium, somewhere in between. What do you think?
I'd say somewhere in between.
I would too, but it's due entirely to the gameplay and careful manipulation of the other players that this and what it takes to play so well is where the weight's going to come
that's where the
from.
meat is. The rules overhead, like I said, is not very much. It's getting to the point to where you actually understand what you're doing
and why you're doing it,
right,
and the repercussions and the impact that has on the game itself. So that's kind of rolling into the complexity of this. What the players can do within the game space that the rules provide is really where the weight of the game is going to come from,
right,
not the complexity in the rules.
No, not at all.
As far as planning, largely tactical game, even though there is some long-term overarching planning that a player can do. Go heavy investing in merchant city tiles to help boost their money and victory points, and less so on armies and stuff. So you can kind of follow a general path, but I feel like what players do and how auctions are going. Are things going higher than you expected, or for more money or more influence than you expected, and you having to adjust on the fly? All that makes it, for overall, I would say, a more tactical game than it is strategic.
Yeah, I would agree. You can't really have a overall plan set in concrete. When you sit down to play the game, there's no way. You have to be flexible.
As far as luck and random factors, All the city, event, and army tiles are face up at the beginning of the game, and during setup, one city tile is removed randomly from each city, so there's a little bit of variability there, but all of those are known before the game starts. There is a random draw of the treachery cards, which they do have an impact on the game, no doubt. My favorite, though, is the stop bidding card.
Yes, the freeze bid.
Yes. You can play this on a player to essentially cause them to bow out of an auction, which forces players to be more thoughtful with their bids, is going up incrementally can be costly if one of these is played on you by the player you're bidding against.
Yep.
Oh, you're going to go up by one? Nope, you're
No,
done,
you're not.
and now I'm going to outbid you, and oh, I have it.
That's one of my favorite parts of the game.
So, or maybe you just bid your actual amount that you're willing to pay, and who cares if somebody plays that freeze bid card on you. So it can influence the way you play the game as far as that specific card is an example. So we talked about everything being up front, face up as far as the tiles. There's the random draw of the treachery cards. And yes, there are dice in this game that you roll. I kid somewhat, but in the end, the dice rolls do play a part in the game. But overall, I feel like it's relatively a small part. They are more or less random modifiers to the already known attack and defending values of the armies that are battling. Yes, a high or low roll may mean the difference between winning or losing a war, but more often than not, it's really the strength of the armies that are pitted against one another that really dictate the outcome of the war.
That's really, I couldn't really come up with anything that was luck or random based other than the treachery cards and the dice. There really isn't anything else.
Now, there is one other thing that I didn't know where to put it, so I put it here, and just to put it out there, is there is that hidden trackable information in the form of influence and money. So take that for what it's worth. I would not want everything to be face up because it would drag the game on far
I agree.
too long for what it is. So if hidden trackable is an issue, well, be aware of it.
Right.
As far as getting it, what do you think?
I think about a decade. That gives you at least no. Let me finish.
A decade? 10 years?
Yeah. And a decade in the game, goofball. But no, like, to be able to see how treachery cards work, to be able to see how the auctions work on both sides, wars, to be able to see all of that stuff is going to take, a turn or a round. And I think that's good to get the game, the rule set, all of that stuff, kind of see how everything works, but being able to actually move the cogs in the way that you want, that's going to take longer.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I have as far as my notes go. It's a game that's going to take repeated plays to really get good in the gameplay, as well as seeing some of the more opaque repercussions of decisions within the game space. It's not a game that you can play well your first game. I don't care if you won your first game against other new players. That doesn't matter. To get good at this game, this is a game that absolutely is going to require repeated multiple plays.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So, what makes the game enjoyable and why?
Auctions.
I love that the auctions start in the pregame.
Yes.
Determine first player by auctioning. And then players in reverse order have to then outbid the first player to then have first choice of families and whatever bonuses that those families will give you throughout the game. As if the game didn't have enough auctions, you get some before the game even begins.
Right. It's I love auctions, and this just should be called Auction the Game. With Italian stuff.
The asymmetrical families have real impact on the game, or they don't have a real impact, a major impact in the game. And what I mean by that is, in the new version of the game, there's the original that has whatever the rule breakers on. Like, you get a discount for bidding influence to be condottieri, or another, you get gold back when bidding for gold, stuff like that. Well, on the other side of the family tiles, and you agree on this before the game starts, they're all muted. They're all lessened so that those asymmetrical starting has less impact on the game and allows for a more strategic game. However, some people say that some of those on the standard size are overpowered or broken. Well, my argument against that is, okay, if you don't want somebody else to have whatever one that you feel is overpowered, bid more to go first or to have first choice of the family, and whoever does that is paying more gold, so they start the game with less gold because they got this. So I feel like there's a player dictated balance, and if you can't balance that or choose not to, that's a player issue, not a game issue.
Exactly, I agree with that.
However, if you don't want to have to mess with that at all, turn it over to the other side and everybody play with the muted side. My apprehension, I guess, about that, I'll be honest, we have not played with the muted side on that on so far. But my hesitancy, we'll go with that, is that kind of lessens the impact of that initial pregame auction. And I feel like that can be and should be an important part of the way to start the game. But then again, with new players don't know the value of these things. So maybe that would be
maybe a good intro game.
Or maybe just a more strategic game. But anyway, I think that's a cool thing, the asymmetrical start, and it's also a cool option for players to whichever side they want to go with.
Right. And one thing about those is that some are definitely better than others. Some of the effects or powers that you get, they all can be used to achieve different goals, though. I mean, like, for example, I believe it's Ite family. They can purchase the heavy-duty military during the first round. Everybody else has to wait until the second round to be able to do that. So, but that is their only power. So if you don't use it to its full potential in the first decade, you completely have wasted your bid. I mean, if you don't get your military and, attack everybody, do as many wars as possible in that first round, then you spent your money for nothing.
Right. But then again, going into the game, if you can't, this goes back to that whole planning thing. If you went into the game planning on using them and, okay, this is my strategy, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to really hit it hard and not necessarily start wars or go to war, but when being condottieri in the wars and being involved and using that power. So yes, I would say it's weaker in a sense, but I bet you if it was in the hands of somebody who knew what they wanted to do and was able to execute things the way they want to do it, then maybe it gives them a big enough head start to where they then can potentially, manipulate their way through the game and not have that as a weak spot and not having a power throughout the rest of the game. Are we at that level? No. But could I see it? Potentially, yes.
All right.
But yes, I do agree that it feels weaker, and if there are others that feel stronger. But again, use the other side of the tiles if you don't want to mess with that.
Right. And another thing is that, I mean, it's silly to say this, but if the family that you choose allows you to pay less for auction wins, then
you should probably remember.
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of important to remember that. I mean, it's the same decade, right, Kliker? It's the same decade.
Yeah, and that's on the players, though. I mean, hey,
for sure.
It's your bonus ability. If you can't remember it, that's on you.
It's not our fault. Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that you have to, don't check your brain at the door. Don't get so involved in the bidding that you forget that you get to pay less for it.
So the game's simple mechanically, and the players dictate how hard the game is. I mean, at least in theory, the game could last, in a 6-player game, it could last to where everybody gets 2 actions. If everybody was just putting up event tiles, the players completely dictate how hard the game is as well as how long the game is. And that's going to either really appeal or really not appeal to certain people. And I'm the type that really appeals to. We're not playing 12 rounds. We are playing however long it takes for all of us, between us, to auction off the 4 event tiles of every decade, which is 12. So maybe it goes 30 rounds. Maybe it goes 12. Who knows? But somewhere in there. I think that's a perk to the game. I really dig that.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So we haven't even talked about negotiation. Now, our group isn't the best with this, but with repeated plays, that comes into play more and more, and it very much is a negotiation game. As an example, negotiating what city is going to be the attacking city. Say on my action, I choose to go to war. I say, hey, I'm thinking about putting this city up as the attacking and this one as the defending. And someone pipes up, hey, I'll give you 2 influence, or I'll give you 3 money if you choose this city as the attacking city. Okay, cool. Always make them pay first, though, because nothing verbal is not binding in this case. So, okay, cool. So I take the money. I don't have to honor it, but let's say I do. Cool. All right, good deal. Then someone else chimes in, hey, you know what? That player also is invested equally over in this city, so why don't you make this one the defending city, and I'll give you a gold or 2 for it. Oh, okay, so now we're going to split the difference? Yeah, deal. And now I got paid for doing something that I may have already wanted to do, or something that either helps me directly or indirectly. Yeah, win-win. I think that's just deliciously fun. That also, though, is going to be group dependent.
Yes, most definitely, because most of the time we just kind of sit there and look at each other and say, okay, and don't negotiate, don't do anything like that.
So there's dual currencies in the game. There's money and influence, and they buy different things. City tiles or shares of the city are always cash. To become condottieri in wars, always influence. Event tiles can be either. To become the Pope, got to bid influence. And both currencies are always tight, which also makes deciding on when to spend them so deliciously important.
Yep. There can be things that are just must-haves for you that round, but that means that, you're broke for the rest of the round.
If those things come available, put up for auction, and you feel like you really got to have it,
nothing you can do, man.
Or you suck it up and you say, you know what, I'm going to let it go and I'm not going to. So, hey, there's that tactical play, change course.
Yep.
Or maybe you stick by your guns and like you said, great, now I'm down to 4 money or 3 money maybe this round. I don't have enough to, when the minimum bid is like 8 or whatever for a city tile, I guess you're done investing in stocks this round.
Yep.
Which can really hamper you or not, depending on how it is that what direction you're going in the game.
Being able to hurt a city by purposefully losing a war is very, very cool. I mean, you're tanking stocks, but you're doing so by losing a war. And it would be an interesting strategy to never obtain an army, or at least a very small one, and constantly get into wars and lose those wars for cities you're not invested in.
That's awesome. Stuff that you have no intent in partaking in, or just to cause players that do have a vested interest in those cities to spend influence, because maybe you do this, you start a war because you want this player who's heavily invested in this city, you think you're going to spend, or they're going to spend influence to defend it. So now they're poorer on influence. But what you really wanted was this.
Was that tile.
Was this tile. And so now they're too broke to be able to bid on it. And hey, you manipulated the players into doing what you wanted them to do so that you get the stuff that you want.
Yep.
Awesome. That is fantastic. So on that note, there's always that near constant emerging and shifting alliances between players because new players are invested in this city, or you never divest. You're never selling shares. And I guess I should mention at some point that you're allowed a total of 6 stocks or 6 city tiles, and only 3 different cities that you're allowed to invest in. So there is a limit on where your investing goes, and you don't want to necessarily, or maybe you do, invest too heavily too early in a city and then watch that city's value just plummet.
Yeah, that's no fun at all.
But at the same time, you don't want to be the only person invested in a city, because then you're too easy to...
Yeah, you're a target at that point.
Yeah, you're too easy to manipulate. Like, oh, I got to go defend them again. And you just become a huge target, like you said. So kind of to circle back on what we had said earlier about forcing players to spend money or influence when they really don't want to, and also having those same tough spots pushed onto you, we enjoy that kind of give and take of player manipulation.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love it. It's fun, but it's tense fun. This is not a, hey, I'm building a resource engine and let me see how well I can do. This is a knife fight that it's stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful in a different way than a game like Agricola would be, to where you're constantly stressed about being able to generate enough food and all that.
And I think that that's an interesting point, because with the Agricola, the tenseness comes from the game. In Princess of the Renaissance, the tenseness comes from the other people around the table.
Yeah, and you're constantly engaged, and you're constantly worrying about other players and what they're going to do, and are they going to thwart your plans? And if they do, are you going to be able to have a fallback plan and a fallback plan to your fallback plan? And, oh, wait, this actually worked. I didn't expect this. Now what do I do? And it's a tense game.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's not a ha ha ha, yay. It's fun.
Yeah.
That kind. And let me ask you something as I'm finishing up the things that I really dig about the game. What do you think about this being considered a potential good crossover game between Euro players and Ameritrash players? In that, there's really a lot of PvP in this game. It's very player versus player, as opposed to engine building or anything else that is very Eurocentric. I feel like all the wars and everything's very abstracted and it's very simple, but the amount of negotiation, a la diplomacy style,
right,
or imperial almost, this kind of feels like it. Does this make it a decent candidate for a crossover for between, to join the two types of games?
I'm not sure. I don't think I agree with that. Because this is more on the economic side of things, because in like Imperial, you have to wrap your brain around the fact that the cities are stocks and not, something else.
Not a player doesn't own a city,
right? Exactly,
or a country in that,
right? Or in that game, but I don't. Not in my opinion, no, it is not.
Okay, well, it occurred to me while I was getting ready for the show, and I was like, I wonder if maybe, because like you said, it is a stock investing game, really,
right,
in a sense.
Yeah.
But it has war, it has negotiation, it has all that. So I thought maybe, but all right. You got anything else on the positive side of the ledger?
No, I think we've talked about everything. So what about not to like about the game?
Well, the first and foremost one that comes to mind is, like most auction games, determining the value of things is very opaque to beginners. Auctions such as which families really do what and how to use them and how does turn order really matter, those are pre-game auctions and they matter, but without experience in your first game, how do you know how to value things?
You don't.
You really don't. And so this is why I said earlier that it absolutely requires multiple plays, potentially, ideally with the same players, to get the most out of this game. This is not going to be a game that you can just do once a year, once every few years, and really get the most out of this game. This is going to require multiple plays and something
In kind of quick succession.
relatively, I think, but it's going to reward folks that want to stick with the game for a bit and not, ooh, what's the latest hotness,
Yeah.
and move on to the next game. So that's going to limit possibly the audience that this is for. But then again, the type of person that is going to want that is going to seek out this type of game anyway. So maybe it's self-selecting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? But yeah, I think it's, yeah.
And it's also fragile with players at different experience levels. And this basically ties into what I was just saying, that if you have somebody that's played the game 5, 6, 7 times and somebody new, the new player is going to get just destroyed.
Yeah, they can just go into the game understanding that and trying to
It's
learn.
a learning game,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
The wars seem kind of arbitrary.
What do you mean?
Well, there's no punishment for you, but the cities you represent can be hurt. So, like, you get paid no matter what.
Right. Which is awesome.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it makes for interesting gameplay, but the actual wars themselves just seem kind of weird, because you would think that, you know, like in a typical war game or whatever, like if you get hurt, you would lose your troops or something would happen.
Right. And yeah, that's a good point, because we haven't even mentioned that you never lose the armies that you build up. So if you take a crossbow guy or a unit, you never lose that.
No.
It's there in perpetuity unless you choose to lose it for whatever reason. And you're only allowed one of each type. Right. And that does seem gamey in some respects, but I could also throw up a thematic reason for that.
Yeah.
That, hey, I am, this super powerful family. I can always recruit this type of unit, so it's no big deal.
I understand where, where it's coming from and how it can be just a part of the game and everything. It's so abstracted that it feels just kind of strange. That's all.
I'll buy that. We actually, it's funny, the first time we played it, we were like, wait, you don't
Right,
lose?
you get money? Like, what?
Yeah, you get money, but you don't lose any of the... Are we sure these don't go back into the supply? No, they really don't. They really, really don't. So this game does impart some frustration and some chaos. Getting treachery cards played on you repeatedly can be really irritating, to say the least, which I want to say it was like Dieste, I think is the family, the one where you were talking about earlier, that you can have, it's either artillery or cavalry in the first round, whereas nobody else can buy those.
Both of those.
But the frustrating thing for me was I kept getting bribed troops card played on me, so I never got to use them. And I'm like, so I think I have this really big, strong, powerful army, because I think they have a 3 attack, which is really, really big in this game, that I just could never get it played. And it's hard not to get frustrated. I mean, yes, it's all part of the game, and I know that going in and everything, but it still was frustrating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can understand that.
Which kind of ties into my next one. Is, at least for me, I got to be in the right mood to play this game.
Yes.
The game pits player versus player, so it's not always an easy game to get to the table with our group, or honestly, it's not a game that I'm always in the mood to play. Yes, this was a Grail game for me, and yes, I thoroughly enjoy this game. But I'm not always in the mood to play this game, because it is that really tense, it's not that fun. Yeah. It's a different kind of fun. So it takes something out of me whenever I play this. So I have to be in the proper mindset, and it's just draining, I guess is a good way to put it. And so that's something some people only want to play those type of games, and cool, no worries. I'm not always that way. Yes, I have my warmongering side to where and my backstabby side to where, I'm in the mood for this, but not always.
And this seems like a game that would be, I mean, we obviously have never done this, but it would be kind of weird as a pickup game. Like, I feel like you kind of need to know the people that you're playing with to be able to get a read on them.
Oh, that would be interesting. So you're saying like at a con, with complete strangers. Let's play Princess of the Renaissance and have no clue.
Right, like you have no idea who the person is across from you that's bidding against you. It's just that
on a personal level, like, oh, I know that Ash is a very honest and straightforward person.
Right.
He wouldn't do that, would he? He wouldn't lie to me,
Right.
would he?
And, I can tell when you're lying because you cannot stop your eyes from smiling. And I know that. Now, someone else might not, but I know that. And so it seems like it would be really hard and weird and not as much fun to play with strangers.
That's something that occurred to me, and I think it would be fun to experience, but you very well might be right in that. That's good call. All right, so before we wrap up, as I am wont to do once in a while, I like going through the comments on the game in BGG and picking out some on the plus and minus side of it and have some fun. So here we go. A game full of subtlety. However, the strategies are not obvious and probably needs a couple of plays to get the most out of it. Kind of as we said, right?
Exactly.
This is a stock market game in which wars are used to affect stock values. I like the idea of deliberately losing fights to advance one's interest. It captures the Machiavellian theme very well, absolutely. It has the modern art concept of groupthink making a city valuable, which is fine, but the wars drive me a little nuts and they're pretty chaotic.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Some concepts weren't clear the first time around, and relative value of certain things was pretty much lost on me.
Yeah, you got it. First game, absolutely.
A rich, tense, and complex bidding game with lots of interesting options even after you run out of money. It isn't elegant, but it delivers brutal choices and intrigue in spades. And lastly, as with most Martin Wallace titles, I find the game a struggle, but I'm comforted in knowing that everyone feels the same way. There are many options, and accurately assessing the value of those options and how much to bid for them is quite the trick. Yes. I think that kind of covers the gamut of all that. So, summary, go for it.
Yeah, because I never want to follow you. Princess of the Renaissance is Martin Wallace at his best. Auctions, treachery, all the good stuff. The Mercury Games reprint clarifies some rules and makes the actual physical game look and feel better than the original Warfrog version. I love auctions and love strategic card play. This game is probably going to wind up being one of my favorite Wallace games.
Nice, okay. All right, so for me, this is an absolutely classic Wallace. Simple-ish rule set that allows players to play the game the way they want to play it. But along with that sandboxy feel comes a certain level of fragility and potential groupthink that can add or subtract from the enjoyment of the game. But the game is the type of idiosyncratic game that I love, be it from Martin Wallace or another designer. It's not going to suit everyone, but those that it does suit, it's going to suit very, very well. So as far as ratings, as y'all know, it's been a while. We rate on a 1 to 6 scale, 1 being burn it with fire and 6 being a Hall of Fame game, 2 being 2, 3, 4, and 5 being some in the middle there. There's no halves, there's no nothing. It's a solid number. So, ladies first.
A 5. It's not a Hall of Fame game to me, but it is a game that it's just a great game. I agree with you that I have to be in the mood to want to play it, but I cannot not rate a game this high when it has this many auctions. Come on.
I also have it rated a 5, which is a little disappointing that we share the same rating yet again.
Hey, we are married.
But still, we have different tastes. But yeah, I have it as a 5, and like you said, I don't always want to play this game. I'm going to go months and not want to play this game. But when I play this game and I'm in the mood to play this game, it scratches all the itches that I want it to scratch. And yes, it has that fiddliness. It has that, a little bit of rough edge that I really like in my games. And that's why I rated a 5. So you very well might see this on a top 50 list, next year.
Yeah.
So, and with that, that's Princess of the Renaissance. And for all those folks who don't know how to get in contact with us, Amanda?
Our website is heavycardboard.com. Our email address is contact@heavycardboard.com. We love hearing from you guys, so please don't be shy. Our Twitter handle is @heavycardboard. Our Facebook page is Heavy Cardboard. Our YouTube channel is Heavy Cardboard Vids, VIDS. Our Instagram is Heavy Cardboard. Our Patreon is patreon.com/heavycardboard. And our BGG guild number is 2044. All right, my friends, the next few weeks are going to be jam-packed with content.
Boy, are they.
We have our interview with Mark Swanson, the designer of Feudum, our feature of Solarius Mission, along with interviews with one of the designers, Andreas Odendahl, or Odie, and the publisher, Uli Blindeman from Spielworks. So, talk to y'all next week.
Let us know what y'all thought of the abbreviated episodes.
Yeah.
More content, more often, less overhead. Win-win.
Win-win.